Okay, we'll begin. Kwai Galazvi Gopan. Hello and welcome everybody. Jean Rooney is my name and I go by the pronoun she. I'm the coordinator of the Advanced Studio Practice program here at the New Brunswick College of Craft and Design. And so thank you to everybody for joining us. We have 22 participants. And a special welcome to our guest speaker today, Tony Merzetti. A reminder before we begin that this session is being recorded, and so by participating, you're consenting to being recorded. And I guess that's a reminder too that just as you see other people on screen and hear them, that you yourself at times will be seen and heard. So if you haven't done so already, please turn your microphone on mute to avoid feedback. And lastly, I would ask for your patience while we navigate the technology. It's a change of pace and a change of delivery mode for everyone. And so to officially begin, I'd ask and call upon Jody to do our territorial acknowledgement.
On this unceded and unsurrendered territory where we live and work, the peace and friendship treaties were signed between 1725 and 1779 by the Elnu, the Wolastoq-Wee-Wic, the Passamaquoddy Nations, and the British. These peace and friendship treaties were among the earliest treaties to be made between Indigenous nations and Western nations. Despite the efforts of the Canadian government since Confederation to assimilate and erase Indigenous peoples through government policies, such as the Indian Act, the Residential Schools Act, the resilience of Indigenous peoples has meant that Indigenous traditions continue to influence the Canadian political, social, cultural, and the environmental landscape today.
Thank you so much, Jody. And so here we are doing this guest lecture series, and I'm going to ask Ben Elder Gomez to tell you a bit about that series. So over to Ben.
This guest lecture series is organized by the Advanced Studio Practice program at the New Brunswick College of Craft and Design in partnership with the Atlantic Center for Creativity. The purpose of the ASP guest lecture series is to model successful contemporary practice to our students and to inform, inspire, and ignite art and design dialogue and engagement in the greater public community. The guest lecture series focuses on New Brunswick and provides a platform for presentation, a time for dialogue, and a celebration of the creative and cultural riches that we hold in Atlantic Canada.
Thank you so much, Ben. And so we have mentioned before that this is a partnership with the Atlantic Center for Creativity, a dynamic group that really all of us should be in the arts field would benefit from being aware of. So I'm going to call upon Audrey Arsenault to tell us a bit about the ACC.
The ACC, Atlantic Center for Creativity, is an initiative that promotes creativity across disciplines. It has three main goals. One, to promote research and programming in the area of creativity and innovation. Two, to offer events such as symposia, conferences, and workshops on a yearly basis for sharing ideas and information. And three, to build partnerships in the area of creativity and innovation on a local, regional, and national basis. You can check out the new online version, Creativity Matters, which was launched this month. Please visit the website atlanticcenterforcreativity.com for additional information on the ACC and this journal.
Thank you so much, Audrey. Now, I know it probably feels a bit wordy. We've lots of announcements. Thanks, Tony, for your patience. But there is an exciting one that I wanted to let you know about today. So we have been awarded a Sheila Hugh Mackay Foundation signature grant for this guest lecture series. And so, what does that mean? What difference will it make? Firstly, by paying our artists a fair wage. So we wish to model best practice, and we believe that artists, like other professionals, should be paid for their work. So we will pay artists the recommended Carfax RAV minimum presentation fee. So that is a huge win. Thank you so much to the Sheila Hugh Mackay Foundation. And secondly, as artists and educators, yes, we teach what we know, but very often we teach who we are. And in particular, we have to model to emerging artists and to each other how we adapt, renew, survive, and support each other during this time. So with that in mind, the series shares this kind of resilience, creativity of creators. So a sincere thank you to Catherine McCall, to the board, and I want to affirm the vitally important work that the Sheila Hugh Mackay Foundation continues to do in promoting and supporting the kind of creation, valorization, and understanding of the visual arts in New Brunswick. We are so lucky to have them. Now, to the man of the moment, to Tony Merzetti, the accidental filmmaker. I'm going to ask Tracy O'Brien to do Tony's official introduction.
Our guest speaker, Tony Merzetti, will give his talk entitled The Accidental Filmmaker. Tony will relate his story as an MBA graduate who turned his back on the traditional, safe, prosperous career in accounting or banking for the uncertain prospects of entering the world of film in New Brunswick in the 1980s. Through his journey, he will relate the life lessons he picked up on the way and how he balanced film creation activities with paid work in the film sector. Tony Merzetti has been involved in the New Brunswick film community since the mid-80s. He is the executive director of the MB Film Co-op, a part-time film lecturer at UMB, a filmmaker and crew person on numerous films, primarily in the fields of cinematography and editing. Over to
Okay. So I'm going to be, I guess, just keeping an eye on anyone that's joining us. So if I occasionally look a little distracted, it'll just be me looking over at the chat or the participants window and that sort of thing. Okay, so can everyone see the PowerPoint slide? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so yeah, as was said, I started in the 80s getting involved in film, but going back before that, I guess I was sort of pulled in a couple of different directions. I didn't realize, the arts was going to pull on me at one point in my life. But I grew up in St. John, and when I was growing up there, I'd always heard about the filmmakers or the actors that came from the city. I think actors were the thing that we all sort of recognized as being associated with film. So people like Louis B. Mayer, who ran MGM, Donald Sutherland, Walter Pidgeon were sort of names that I learned to identify with the city, who had gone on to bigger and better things after they left St. John. So my earliest experiences around home movies would have been my dad making home movies with his 8mm camera and taking slides of the family's journeys and places we lived and our camps and stuff like that. And I used to love that. And as I got older, when I got into high school, I decided to invest in some technology. So at that time, Super 8 was the format that people shot on. So I bought a camera and a projector at Sears. I guess that was the thing to do, go to Sears to buy your stuff. And that set me up to be a one-person crew. So, at that time, there was no community of filmmakers or anyone that you could work with. You just sort of got a camera and did things on your own. So I was documenting my parents' convenience store, like walking up and down the aisles, shooting things that were on the shelves, shooting the people that were working at the store and the outside of the building, and, just sort of playing around with the camera. And then Market Square opened in St. John, and I went there and filmed the inside of that building. And Bobby Orr showed up one day, one of my favorite hockey players. So I got a shot of him. And then I think, one of the sort of more ambitious projects I did with the camera was when Charles and Diana came to St. John on a royal visit. And I followed them around with my camera and grabbed a bunch of shots and then edited together a little film where I spoke in a fake British accent and added some orchestral music because I thought that's what you did to make documentaries. And, I was sort of hooked on the whole idea of storytelling with a camera. So all was not good, though, in my early days of filmmaking, because at one juncture I decided I would create an animation film. And I had these little Star Trek toys. There were sort of little characters who were about 4 inches tall. And I built the Enterprise set and had some models and stuff like that. So I said, well, these are ideal subjects for a film. So I got my Super 8 camera and started filming, and decided at one point, like, these characters are really small. If they're going to appear big on screen, I'm going to have to get closer to them. So I put the camera really close to them, just inches away, and looking through the glass viewfinder, everything looked good to me. So after weeks of producing this film, I sent it away, and there's always the joy of waiting for your film to return. And when it came back, everything looked, as you see on this screen here, very blurry. So I had made my first experimental film, it seems. So it was a lesson to me that if you're going to work with some tools, it's probably a good idea to get familiar with how they work, and so you can use them properly. So I sort of got out of high school and then was deciding what to do with my life. My parents had always been entrepreneurs working in businesses and retail trade. So I thought, well, I probably should get a business degree, and that would be a good fallback for me no matter what I choose to do in life. So I went to UMBSJ, and following that, I was deciding where to go afterwards and what to do, and I ended up at St. Mary's University taking an MBA. So I always felt that if I had this, that no matter what I did in life, this would be a good fallback to have. And I never considered, an arts degree as something that, would lead me to a job. So, I took the safe route. But when I was in my final years at university, I found that a lot of the cases that I was doing, presentations and stuff like that, were about Hollywood film companies and mergers between companies like Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, which was Louis B. Mayer's company, and United Artists. So I sort of had an inkling that, I wasn't really that interested in getting into banking and accounting, that I really wanted to, do something in film. But when I graduated and returned home, I really didn't know what I could do, because I didn't study film. I had no experience really making films professionally. So how could I get hired as a filmmaker or as a worker in films? So I spent a lot of time at the St. John Library and read about 40 books in 3 months on all different aspects of film. And, even doing this, I knew I was just postponing the inevitable of, what can I do career-wise if I want to do something in film? So it turned out that a chance encounter would sort of set my life in a new direction. My mom was at Shoppers Drug Mart, and she was talking about me, and the woman was talking about her son. And she happened to mention that I was interested in film, when the woman said, oh, well, my son is involved in film. He works at the National Film Board office. They had a distribution office to provide 16 millimeter prints to schools and libraries and things. So I went down and talked to Charles McClellan, and he told me that he had been involved in setting up this film co-op in Fredericton, and that this may be a good fit for me to be able to learn filmmaking. So I drove to Fredericton and arrived at this office. It was Fiddlehead Films and New Brunswick Filmmakers Co-op, 51 York Street. So I went inside, and when I was in there, there was no one in the office. So I was like, oh, okay, what do I do? I've driven up here. I didn't make a call or anything. So, so I waited by the bulletin board and hoped that someone wouldn't show up, and thinking I was in there trying to rob the place. But then Dave Clark, sitting at the desk there, he came back. He was just doing some errands and didn't lock the door. So I was like, okay. So he talked to me and, gave me a lot of time and explained what the co-op did, how they offered workshops. They gave you opportunities to work on films and get some experience. And, down the road, you could even make your own film. So I just thought this was like amazing. This was like exactly what I needed. Someone with no experience, no background in film was going to have an opportunity to learn at this organization, basically for free. I could get my education here. So I took a bunch of workshops, and you can see, I think there's 2 women in the photos. There was a lot of white guys back then at the CoOp. Things have changed a lot for the better since then, but the workshops brought in people from outside the province who had skills and experience, and they basically trained us into how to make films and how to use the equipment properly. And that was really, really important, I think, for us, because there were no schools at the time in New Brunswick or really in the region that taught filmmaking. So if you were going to learn, you basically had to go to Montreal or Toronto. So I saw that this was sort of a place that existed that people could come and learn film. So my first film shoot that I worked on was called Just Say Hello. And the CoOp had gotten some money to do some bicentennial vignettes. So Kevin Holden was the director of the film. He was one of the first people I met when I came to Fredericton. So he pulled me right along and said, okay, you're going to do the slate. You're going to hold the clapper up in front of the actors and then read the information on it and then clap it. So I was like, that was like the funnest thing, being there with a crew of 4 people in Market Square in St. John with the town crier, with him saying, oye, oye, happy bicentennial New Brunswick. So another scene in the film, we ended up going to the Premier's house, Richard Hatfield at the time, and I got to record sound on that occasion. So the thing about the CoOp is you weren't sort of typecast into one job. You could learn something and then someone would get you to do it on a film. So it really provided you with an opportunity to get some valuable experience. One of the other films that was done as a vignette was a film called A Living Tradition. And that film was showing the comparison between the old ways that we used to do our lumbering and the new ways. So I was able to find some old footage at the archives of them with, running logs on the river and cutting trees down and stuff like that. And we shot some new footage with Herb Curtis, a local writer, well, actually from the Miramichi, but one of New Brunswick's great writers. So I'll show you this 1-minute film, and I was basically given an opportunity to edit this film. So this piece of equipment here is called a moviola, right here, and then in the lower left corner, there's a movie scope viewer, there's a synchronizer, and some reels and stuff like that that were used to cut the film together. So this was the film.
The kind of New Brunswick we are today carries the seeds of yesteryear.
A for the axes in that you've all known. B for the boys that can use them also. C for the chopping which now begins. And D for the danger that we do stand in, and how merry are we. No mortal on earth is as happy are we. Come high, dairy ho, dairy high, dairy dum. Give the shanty boys whiskey, there's nothing goes wrong.
New Brunswick, a living tradition.
So one of the things that I learned working on this film, because I had some people who came in and looked at the edit and made suggestions, and they had a lot more experience than I did. So I learned that it was really good to listen to people, take objective criticism, and learn from people that are more experienced than you. And through this opportunity, I also got to work with a great picture and sound editor at the National Film Board named Les Hallman. And he would be a continual influence over my times editing. And that's another thing, is like when you get opportunities to work with people that have experience, I mean, it really helps you to sort of move forward in what you're doing. So after this happened, after working on a few films at the CoOp, the director, Dave Clark, says, look, you should start thinking about making your own film. You've taken workshops, you've done several jobs on a film. So it was like, oh, make my own film. What am I going to make it on? So I thought about it for quite a long time, and eventually it turned out that a film that I saw on First Choice, which was one of the early sort of pay TV channels, that was an Oscar winner called The Man Who Skied Down Everest. It sort of inspired me. When I watched the film, there was something about the person who sort of annoyed me because he seemed very sort of egotistical and pretentious. And his sort of philosophy on what he was doing, climbing up Everest to ski down the hill, it just seemed like, a real ego trip to me. And his voiceover narration, I decided would be the impetus for my film. And I would take the words that he has and put them with different images, maybe give it sort of a regional New Brunswick take. And so this film, I'll stop there for a second. So this film, I was basically the camera person. All my crew and equipment all fit into my Pontiac Acadian car. We drove around Fredericton. We pretended we were shooting in Halifax, where Citadel Hill's located. And this is a short scene from that film that was shot on 16 millimeters. My first time shooting and editing my own stuff.
To men of the East, Citadel Hill has been the mother goddess of the world, Shomaluma. I go as a pilgrim, inspired by the majesty of Shomaluma, to ski down the toughest hill in the world. I remember Everest, Fuji, but none has prepared me for the challenge that awaits me. I have traveled the globe to ski, to soar with the winds, to laugh with the gods.
Okay, so one of the things that I learned making this film was the entire process of making a film. And although the film was only 5 minutes long, it took me probably a year and a half from the time I wrote the script until we had our final 16 millimeter print of the film. So no matter if you're making a 5 minute film or a feature film, the process is very slow, very methodical, and it costs a lot of money to shoot on film, I learned as well. The film played at the Atlantic Film Festival in Halifax, and it also played at the Dundee Mountain Film Festival in Scotland. And I always wondered what the people in Scotland that were, into mountain films and stuff like that would think of this parody of, their beloved sport. But anyway, I didn't worry too much about it. So the other thing that happens at this time, I had been hired to work at the CoOp. Dave Clark, the coordinator, left, and that's when he suggested that I should take over the CoOp. So I thought about it, and I figured I could do it for a short period of time before I headed off to Toronto to seek my fame and fortune in the film industry, which didn't quite work out. But working at the CoOp, I realized a lot of my business skills came into play. I was able to do the accounting, do financial reports, write up proposals for grants. A lot of the skills that I had learned in business helped me out in the arts. So I think business and the arts has a very close tie. I think any business skills you can pick up can help you in your art. Now, one of the ways that you make money in the arts, because at that time, I think I was making $7,000 a year working at the CoOp. So you try to get some freelance work out there in the commercial industry. So there was a film called Samuel Lount, which was a BC feature film that shot at King's Landing. We had shot at King's Landing another film, which I'm going to talk about a bit later. But this was a great opportunity to watch people using professional equipment and, how do they set up the lights? How do they do their sound? How do they do their practice? And I think that's one of the things for learning, even if you're going to be an independent filmmaker and never go out and work in the commercial world, on a full-time basis. I think you can learn a lot from these professionals because a lot of them are artists. And I think that was another thing that I began to realize as well, that a lot of people think that the director is the artist on the film and that the other people are just there as support people and they're not artists in their own right. But I do consider that all the people, whether the cinematographer, the writer, the music composer, they're all artists. Everyone that works on a film, for the most part, is an artist, and they're all adding to the vision of the film in the end. So Samuel Lount, when I got hired on that film, the producer and director came to the film co-op to look for some production assistants to help out on it. And one of the things they did, they went around the room and just asked people's background. And when I explained I was in business, I'd taken business at school, and I thought, it would be a good fit because film is about 50% business, 50% art. The director producer turned to me and he said, well, actually, you've got a good background because film is probably 90% business and 10% art. So, that was sort of a little revelation to me as well. Down the hall from the co-op, there was a gentleman named Fred Clark who ran Fiddlehead Films. And I was lucky enough to be able to work on some of the projects that he did. So he filmed The Royal Visit in 1984, The Pope's Visit in 1984. There was a shoot at Metapanega, which was a film done for the archaeology department of the province. I got to work on some assistant editing on that. And then I also got to go down into a mine shaft that was being built in Sussex for a potash mine. So there were lots of really cool adventures to work on as a freelance film person. And besides being fun, it also gave you a little supplemental income. Because like I say, at the co-op, you weren't getting rich fast. Some other opportunities that came up to get some experience and work on films were commercials. So I remember there was a Schooner beer commercial. You get to work generally in the lighting department or camera department and stuff, helping out on that. And there's a very small crew base of film people in New Brunswick. So generally you would start running into the same people working on shoots. There was an Eaton's ad that shot at Macadam, and it was probably a $250,000 ad. And they brought a full equipment package and team down. There were ad executives and, a whole bunch of people on this set. And I learned a valuable lesson there because sometimes you think you know it all, but then you work on a professional commercial set and you learn a lesson fast. So this large 12 by 12 overhead here is used to soften light. A light shines through it. So we had to set one of these up for a scene. And after we finished the scene, me and the other person decided that, we should take it all apart. Let's neaten the space up and we'll just take it apart. So we took it apart. Well, 10 minutes later, they came back and said, okay, put the screen up. And we were like, we already took it down and put it away. It said, you what? It's like, you shouldn't do that. And, blah, 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 blah. So we sort of got ragged out about that and we put it together as quick as we could. And we learned like, okay, you've got to, know what you're doing and don't make assumptions. And, people are going to yell at you in the industry, which, for some people that becomes sort of a turnoff and they just decide to stay with the independent sector. So another film that I got to work on at the co-op, which was very exciting for all of us, was after we did our vignettes, we decided we wanted to do a half-hour drama, which was a bit of a stretch for us because we had really not a lot of experience. But we approached the National Film Board with our plan, and they thought, yeah, you guys are ready. Let's give you some money and some film stock and processing and help you make this film. So it was based on a New Brunswick short story by Stuart Truman in his book, Ghost Pirates and Treasure Trove, The Phantoms that Haunt New Brunswick. And I think one of the things that stuck with me to this day. And one of the reasons why I'm always interested in historical stories about New Brunswick, about New Brunswick people, finding those interesting regional stories, was Stuart Truman told us after he gave us permission to use his short story for the film. He said, you know, there's people in Upper Canada that make films on Riel and Radisson, but our stories don't get told. So if our stories are going to be told, it's up to us to do that. So I was like, wow, yes, we're empowered. We have to take on that responsibility and that duty. And they are our stories to tell. So we should be the ones doing it. So these are some images from the film. You can see we had a ghost doll here that was built by Rick Sagan, and it was lit up. It had a small trouble light in it and an extension cord, and it was dragged along a clothesline along the side of a road to scare people that were driving on the road. Grace Bauer standing here with a mask that was made of her face that was used for the face of the doll. We had some rum runners here. So in the summer of '84, we shot for 24 days total for a half-hour drama, which was a lot. And we had 18 overnight shoots. We generally ended up at the Diplomat around 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun was coming up. And everyone really bonded. A whole bunch of new people came to the co-op at that time. And I think that was one of the things, you know, that sort of always kept me with this place, the film co-op, is that sort of bond you have with all the folks that are part of it. So it took us 3 to 4 years to complete it, though. It was a really ambitious project. We did bite off more than we could chew. We really didn't know what we were doing. We had reshoots to do. There was a lot of work. But one of the things that the funders told us was you have to finish what you start. No one's going to give you money for anything else if you're a quitter. So that was sort of a lesson for us, is that if you're going to start something, no matter how it turns out, it's going to be a learning experience, but make sure you finish something. So here is a short scene from The Spectre of Rexton.
This innkeeper, after having a terrible fight with his wife Emma, stormed off into the night in a drunken rage, leaving her alone. Now, his wife had always been true to him, but Harry was a jealous man. And on this terrible night, Harry's jealousy drove him mad.
So as you can see from that brief scene, it was a very ambitious film. We were out at King's Landing filming. We were burning signs. You know, we did not burn King's Landing down, luckily. I think, you know, we would have got into a lot of trouble had we done that. And a lot of other film companies have come to King's Landing since then to film. So we got to protect that resource. But that was a lot of fun. I think, you know, the new group of people that joined the co-op really got involved with a lot of other projects afterwards. And that's one of the things I think why people get involved in filmmaking is community and the fun. So other opportunities that came up that sort of helped me professionally and were very satisfying to work on was Children of a Lesser God, was a feature film that was shot in St. John, and it starred William Hurt and Marlee Matlin. It got 4 Academy Award nominations and 1 for Best Actress. But I applied for a job on that as an apprentice editor, and I was lucky enough to get to work on it. The editor on the film, Lisa Fruchtman, was an Academy Award-winning editor. She'd worked on The Right Stuff and won an Academy Award for that. Her first film was The Godfather 2. She'd worked on Apocalypse Now. So, I mean, it's just, it's really thrilling to be that close to people that, are very successful and have made really interesting films. And that's a picture of me. That's why I don't have a mustache now, wearing the Paramount shirts that Lisa had bought us. So that was a wonderful experience working on the film. And I actually got to, on another film, I got to work with Marlee Matlin again. Which this film was not as good. It was called In Her Defense. But that's the other thing, is it's a very small world, the film community, and you can often get to work on films with people multiple times, even if they're, like celebrities from LA. So. Okay, so New Water for Girl was another great experience, shooting in Cretin. I got to hang out with Ashley McIsaac, the fiddler. We shot a scene with him. Nicholas Campbell, the actor from Da Vinci's Inquest, was very approachable after hours, and you could chat with him about anything. Mary Walsh was on set, and she talked about the difficulties as an independent filmmaker trying to get projects done. So you sort of, you can become connected to people that you often look at as inaccessible, which is, really cool. There was 5 CBC half-hour dramas that were done, and I got to work on, it was 2 or 3 of them. And other people that worked on it, this one here, 106 Fire Hydrants, Anna Silk, who was on Lost Girl, her mom, Ilke, was directing that film, but Anna worked on it. So it's kind of neat to see how far people can go that start out working in film, that there are opportunities out there. And one of the people that worked on Spectre of Rexton, Heinz Gloss, he's working now in Toronto on the Star Trek Discovery series as a lighting person. So, there are opportunities. If you start out at a film co-op, you can stick around and make your own films, or you can go away and get jobs in the industry. So I think that's an important consideration for people that are looking, for careers in film. Now, the second film I did, which was quite a few years later, came about when I was talking to another co-op member, and he said, we should do a film together. And I said, oh, that sounds like a great idea, sharing the work. But sometimes when you work with people, you realize, like, sometimes it can be challenging because people have different work methods. And if you're really sort of want to be prepared and the other person's a little looser about planning and just sort of going with the flow, that can make a little bit of a challenge. But this film we did came about, there was a comic that I saw in Viz magazine called The Thieving Gypsy Bastards, which of course is totally politically incorrect. But we took the story and twisted it around into a story about sort of men, and the men being assholes, and they're the problem, and it's not the gypsies that are bad. So in this story, this group of Roma set up on this family's lawn, and they don't want to move. And so the 2 males in the family, the head of the Roma family and the owner of the house is very much possessive of his property and wants these people gone, but they won't leave. And the father won't let the family, like the daughter, do what she wants to do, so he's being sort of mean. So in the end, they sort of get shut down by the women. They sort of take over. And there's some other pictures. And you may notice here George Fry played a key role in the film, and also Ilke Silk acted in it. So I was really fortunate to have them involved, and I'll just play this short scene from the film.
Harry, what the hell is going on? The winds are stirring in the heavens. We must pay heed, as the spirits predict a time of great turmoil.
Oh, Judas, they've brainwashed you.
Pay no heed to her, my friend. My wife's predictions are always vague.
Mary, why are they still here?
The money I've lost at the track.
Is that petulia oil?
Oh, buy some lucky heather, Timmy?
You're all a bunch of charlatans, and I want you off my property now.
Ha! Parenti au manca stragori ne copia.
No curses, Mama. You insult our host.
Here's my prediction. If you're not all gone by nightfall, I'm calling the police, and I'll make sure you run out of here like a bunch of common curs.
Okay, so that film, it was a lot of fun in some ways looking back on it. I have a lot of fond memories about it, but it was a stressful process. So one of the things when you're working on films, you have to, really consider the relationship that you get into when you're partnering with another person on a film. Me and the person I worked with are still very good friends today, but we probably wouldn't work in the same way on a project now. So I sort of, some of the stories that I'm interested in, I sort of go between documentary and drama. And one of the films that, was a personal favorite of mine came about when I traveled to Italy with my wife back in 2005. And I decided to visit the home that my grandfather came from to find out more about, what it was like, why did he leave it, the family that was sort of left behind, to meet them. So it was, when I started out, I was just, capturing stuff on camera as a tourist and just for archival record. But then when I got back to New Brunswick and looked at the material, I realized that I could make a film out of this. So I did. And here's a scene from this film on my grandfather.
My mother is... Non fai l'attrice, ma... Certo, se scarpette le fai le durate Natale a Santo Stefano. Vabbè, che devo fare? Ho fatto un piccolo là. Ma perché mi fai queste cose? Sì, prego. Il caffè è fatto, però. Il caffè è pronto. Sì, poi quando we're gonna walk around. Ok, adesso. Bene.
Giulianella.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao.
Mi devo conoscere. Adesso fate un giretto, una passeggiata, andate a vedere Monte Libretti.
Yeah.
Bene? Sì.
Bene, fatto bene.
So I think one of the things making this film is when we went to visit Montelibretti, once again, I'm sort of one of those people who's just sort of impulsive. I don't seem to plan very well. So we just showed up in this town unannounced, and we went to City Hall. Everything looked like it was closed down. And we went to the house, and I think one of my fears was that I didn't speak Italian, and I didn't know if they spoke English. So when we arrived at the house, we found out that the daughter could speak some English, so we had a way to communicate, but the rest of the family didn't speak any. So, that was sort of our big fears, is we'd just be looking at each other and not know how to communicate. But our short visit, our day visit, turned into a 7-day stay with them, and it was like one of the best experiences in my life. So I think taking that chance of going out there to this small community and not knowing how things were going to work out, that's a great thing, a great challenge to yourself to do things like that. Now, one of the other things that came up that I really like are regional film stories about local people that the world should know about. So the CoOp got some money in 2008, 2009 to do a series of films on Fredericton, a cultural capital. So I did 2 films. One of them was on Francis Sherman, who was a lesser known poet from Bliss Carmen and Charles G.D. Roberts, who gave Fredericton the designation of the Poets' Corner of Canada. So this is a short scene from Francis Sherman. It's set probably around 1895. This scene is where Francis's mother and father have a conversation. He is about to go to New York to try to raise some money for his business, but he is actually not going to end up coming back to the family afterwards.
Everything's going to be all right, Allie. I just need to get some extra financing for the business in New York. I still have friends there I can approach.
What about someone in town? You know everyone here.
It's not that easy, Allie. I've exhausted all my options.
What about the children?
I need you to be strong for the whole family. The economy is going to turn around soon. Frank can help. He's a good boy. He's got a good job at the bank. I'd better go.
Okay, so that was a short scene from Francis Sherman, and I know we're running low on time, so I'm just going to jump ahead to, I just want to show clips from a couple of other films that I did. So another story that sort of came on me, and sometimes these films, I don't actually plan them. I just start shooting something and then realize like, hey, there's a film here. So the Mazoukas was a famous downtown store that people would go to get tobacco, newspapers, stuff like that. But the characters that owned it, Gus and his brother, they were really rude to people. And some people avoided the store because they just found them to be very gruff and ignorant. And they didn't realize like that wasn't really who they were or what they were. And one of the cool things that I found out when I started researching this story, because initially I just started going in to film the store just to have some documentation of it for after it closed so we could remember it and what it looked like inside and stuff. But then when I got reading some information about them that they had, I found out that their grandfather had immigrated from Italy, worked on a railroad, started up a tobacco confectionery type store. And I was like, God, my grandfather did the same thing. That's really weird. They have parallel stories. So I felt a connection and bond to them. And I found out that there weren't really gruff underneath. And the friends who knew them the best said they were actually very sweet. They were softies. So here's a little bit sort of about the gruffness, I guess, of the Mazoukas.
Yeah, I used to get a kick out of Johnny when somebody's reading a magazine. He'd be looking in the mirror and say, put that magazine down, you've read it enough, buy it or take off.
I think Johnny threw me out one day because, or asked me to leave because I think I was in, didn't have any money and I was looking at one of the magazines, and that's not allowed in here. So I think that's one of my earliest memories.
Here. Paid for them, you might as well take them. Expect you at Mass tomorrow, eh? Don't be sleeping in like last Sunday.
No, I'll be there.
My name's Norm.
Norm.
Yeah.
Don't mention his last name because you're going to get in jail.
You had your mouth open and couldn't hear or see.
Select hearing is what it's called.
He had his mouth open. Just give me an Instapick on the 649.
He's Italian, boy.
Nod your head if you understand. Instapick 649, yes.
Oh, for tonight? I thought you wanted for next week.
Like if you come in and we're talking, we're bitching to some people, and the other people are trying to figure out what's going on that don't know anything about it. That's, I think, where the image came from.
A line at Mazoukas doesn't mean a lot. I've been standing here for 20 minutes and you keep serving everybody ahead of me. 25 minutes.
We have a lot of fun besides being being ugly to people.
Take your glasses off so you can see.
Okay, so that's a little bit of taste of the Mazoukas. They were like a real sort of institution in the downtown of the city. And, you know, when these places close, it's kind of sad because, you know, people miss what they added to the culture of the community. Now, the last clip that I'm going to show you is from the second film that I did on the poets from the Poets Corner of Canada, and this one's on Bliss Carmen. And this story was, you know, when you're doing the research and you're trying to figure out how to tell a story about someone, you'll find all these facts and pieces of information, but you have to try to find a hook to the story because you're not telling their life, you know, in some sort of chronology, like they were born here, they did this, they went to school here. You're not doing that. You need something to engage people and to pull them into the story. So this story was about how Bliss Carmen and Charles G.D. Roberts got into a fight because of a woman. And in this case, the woman, Mary Perry King, had gotten together with Bliss Carmen, and the thing that she was doing was sort of pulling Bliss away from writing the poetry that he used to write. So Charles G.D. Roberts is very defensive of his friend, and this is a scene where he confronts Mary Perry King, and it's going to lead to a schism that will last for several years, you know, almost up to the death of Bliss Carmen.
A number of us, friends of Carmen, have been talking. We are concerned.
Concerned?
We feel that you have been exerting an undue influence upon him. This personal harmonizing business.
Personal harmonizing is based on our Unitarian philosophy. It is a philosophy we live by.
This philosophy, if you will, has corrupted my friend. It has irrevocably harmed his verse. His work is becoming, dare I say, a laughingstock in literary...
Stop!
Yes?
How dare you? Mr. Carmen is one of the foremost poets of the day. What manner is this to speak of a friend?
I speak in honesty, madam, and with the intention of protecting his best interests.
I will hear no more. And tell your friends that if they have so low an opinion of Mr. Carmen, they may keep their counsel to themselves.
Okay. And that was everything that I guess I wanted to talk to you today. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Thank you so much, Tony. That was really, really wonderful. Yeah,
Thank you.
fantastic. We have two students who have been helping to moderate the chat. So I'll just ask if they have captured anything there.
Ian, the only question I see is from Isabel, wondering where these recordings are kept.
Yeah, just quickly, Isabel, the recordings, this is our third talk, and so they're being edited and rendered, and we will make an archive available, and we will send that out to everybody on the usual guest list, so you'll be notified as soon as that happens. Tony, I was really struck actually by, it was just wonderful watching that trajectory of your career. And one of the things that has always struck me about you is that you're so personable and you have such an easy nature and you're a very humble person. And I think part of you being able to run, yes, you have the business background, but you also have a very listening kind of spirit, and you reference that with being on sets. And I'm just wondering, as well as experience, how much of that attitudes do you attribute to being able to kind of move projects forward and to bring so many moving parts and different people together?
Yeah, no, I think it is important to sort of be empathetic to other people and to help other people. Like I've always found helping the members of the co-op do things and be successful, it comes back to you in the end. I mean, people look at the co-op in a positive way because of the successes of the other people. So some people, you know, they may be more interested in their own personal successes and figure other people's successes are an impediment to them. But I've always looked at it that, you know, anytime someone wins an award or gets a grant or finishes a film or has a film accepted at another festival, like it's helping the whole community out. And I see the benefit of community growth and development, and whether, you know, it's growing communities in other cities of, you know, filmmakers who get together to make films as teams, or involving underrepresented groups and having them be empowered to tell their stories. You know, I get more joy out of that. It's almost like watching people open their Christmas presents rather than seeing your own Christmas presents. I feel the same way about it.
Thank you, Tony. There are some interesting questions coming through. So first on the list, Audrey says, do you have any projects that you're currently working on, or are you keeping them secret for now?
Well, I've been working on a film on Charles Sheedy Roberts, but the co-op keeps me so busy that it's really hard to find the time to do it. And then my wife and I, we try to go to Italy every 2 or 3 years. So it's like your summer's basically shot if you're going on a trip, I find. So I will get to it again. It's one of those things, I'll dig the script out and read it over and then, you know, think of some changes and things. So someday I will do that.
Yeah, I think we can all identify as artist educators, finding that balance and time to get to your own work as well. And for anybody who doesn't know Kat's work, Kat LeBlanc, Tony's wife, you should, incredible voice, singer-songwriter, so check out her work. Matt has a question. He said, who's the most famous person you've ever worked with?
I would say probably, find some lighting things here. There. I would say probably William Hurt and Marlee Matlin would be the most famous. I mean, William Hurt won an Oscar. Marlee Matlin has, like that whole film, Children of Lesser God. John Seale, the director of photography, won an Oscar for The English Patient. You know, it was an amazing experience. And, you know, very early on in my career, I was basically working in film for about a year and a half when this film came to St. John. And, you know, so, yeah.
And we're getting close to time. There's about a minute left before I wrap up. So I'll finish with the next question. Marilyn Luscombe says, it takes courage to step into the unknown and to be open to criticism. What would be your further advice on developing that courage?
Well, I think it can be a really hard thing to put stuff out there and have people say negative things about it. And I think there's ways that you can make comments to help people create a better project without sort of bringing them down and making them feel bad or, you know, incompetent in what they're doing. And it's all about finding that way to make suggestions on changes in a kind way. And I think that's probably something that, you know, people can work to develop, that, you know, being blunt and just telling people like, yeah, this work is crap. Have you ever thought of being a mason? You know, it's like, what? It's like, that's not helpful. But, you know.
Well, Tony, thank you so much on behalf of all of us. That was incredibly enlightening and encouraging. And I want to thank you for the work that you do. We're very lucky to have you here in New Brunswick. So, Wolwe everybody, thank you. A reminder that next week on October the 8th, Casey Burkholder will be talking about DIY media making, activism, and community building within and beyond our COVID-19 pandemic. And this is Culture Days month, for anybody who's not aware. And so if you go to the culturedays.ca.com, website, you will find there our own Janice Wright Cheney and Jennifer Lee Wiebe have a show open right now at the UNB Arts Center called Attending the Apocalypse. And so if you go to Google Culture Days, and you'll be able to follow that and get more information. So thank you, Tony. Thank you to everybody. And